Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday this week, not Sunday, and it is 11 a.m. And welcome to Mark's live gardening. Really exciting things to get through. I don't, because there's quite a lot of them. We'll be looking at how to deal with ornamental grasses, both deciduous and evergreen. Just picking up on the gardening tip video that I did on clematis cuttings, how to deal with dock beetle, how to plant a shrub against a fence or wall, and in this case a lovely holly, and how to divide hellebores that are growing in a pot and how best to use them as underplants to an ornamental tree. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Mark Lane. I am a TV gardening presenter. I'm also a published author, and I'm an award-winning garden designer. And my new book, Royal Gardens of the World, is coming out in September of this year, which can be bought, obviously, at all good bookshops and online. So here we are. We're now going to be looking at ornamental grasses. And obviously, please remember throughout this clinic to share with your friends. Please leave comments. Please like it. The more likes, the more comments I get, then the better it is for everybody, because then it's picked up by Google and everyone else. Good morning, John B, to you. So, ornamental grasses. So the question actually came from Crofton Park, which was a lovely community garden that I actually helped design. We put in some lovely ornamental grasses in there, as well as lots of other herbaceous perennials. And Crofton Park have said, thank you so much for all of the gardening tips and clinics. They've been very helpful. Thank you. That's really lovely to hear. They said, any tips on caring for different grasses are very welcome. Have lots of different ones at the community garden. Should they all be cut back? I've seen that Skipper, can't recall the name, shouldn't, and when ideally to do this. Good morning, Donna, to you. Well, obviously, ornamental grasses, you can have evergreen ones and you can have deciduous ones. I will get onto the steeper a little bit later, but I'm just going to talk through the general way of caring for evergreen and deciduous first of all. So the deciduous ones really need to be trimmed back annually, early to mid-spring, so that the grass looks great for the rest of the year. Whereas evergreen grasses are even more low maintenance than that. What's better than that? And they only really require tidying up by removing dead material, which you can often do by gently combing through the grass with your hands. Now, for the majority of deciduous ornamental grasses, such as Discampsia and the very tall, say, Miscanthus, where the grass turns biscuity brown in the autumn and winter, then it should be pruned to almost ground level before growth starts, which probably means around about mid-March for most of the UK and maybe sort of early April for other parts. Good morning, David, to you as well. Pennisetum, however, doesn't really start sending up new leaves until later in the spring. So ideally, you want to leave these until late April. And again, if you're in the colder parts, maybe in Scotland, you'll leave that to just sort of early May, so that the old stems, which are known as culms, which is C-U-L-M-S for those that want to know, can protect the actual crown of the grass. With some of the taller deciduous grasses, such as the Miscanthus, it's sometimes easier to actually cut off halfway down, so sort of cut from the top, so that you can see the lower part a lot more clearly, and see the lower part of the crown and any new shoots that might be coming up, because you don't want to cut any of those new shoots. So if you're cutting back tall Miscanthus, and you can carry out the work sort of late February, early March, before the new shoots appear, then sometimes you can do that with just a hedge trimmer or even lawn trimmers. As long as there's no green foliage, you're absolutely safe to do that. So as I say, always ensure that you do not cut back any new green growth. That's a bit of a mouthful. Now, in the past, when I've actually pruned back my ornamental grasses, and I've got lots of them here at the orchard because I really, really love them. I've actually sort of just shredded all of the prunings of the grasses and used them as a mulch around the grass, and it's just helped sort of keep down the weeds and just sort of just putting back the nutrients of the plant back from those prunings. Now we get on to the steeper. Now Crofton Park, I actually put in Steeper tenuissima, which is a lovely sort of wafty ornamental grass, which is really, really gorgeous, and it just catches the light when it moves. It really is a stunning grass, but it can perform as an evergreen in some gardens. Although it is deciduous, it can perform as an evergreen. So in London, more often than not, it will perform as an evergreen because it's a little bit warmer. Sometimes down in the south, it also will. But in lots of other places, it won't. It will just be like a deciduous one. Good morning, Phil, to you. Always watching from Doncaster today. So therefore, if the dead material in the steeper is low down, then treat it like an evergreen, and then literally just comb through and remove all that loose foliage, which you can do in sort of April and even now in May. If there's a lot of dead material, or you just forget, then cut it back fully in April or May. Two ways of really dealing with steeper. I would probably go for, if you're in London, especially with Crofton Park, I would go through sort of combing it through, and that would then just get rid of all of that dead stuff. And of course, ornamental grasses are brilliant because, you know, they sort of knit a border together. Doesn't matter what colours you have, by sort of placing ornamental grasses throughout with all these lovely, colourful herbaceous perennials, and even shrubs and bulbs, it sort of knits. It sort of knits it all, and it's a lovely way also. If you've got a really strong colour and you've then got a pale colour, you want to put the two together. If you put an ornamental grass in between, it sort of blurs the colours a little bit, and it just works. Now, for sort of small evergreen grasses, such as festuca, for example, they can be trimmed back with secateurs in spring by sort of removing the brown tips that you normally get on the leaves, and also cutting out any dead leaves, which normally happen sort of around the base. For really large species, such as Cortaderia or the pampas grass, you need to hard prune in early spring, cutting back without damaging the new shoots. Now, pampas grass is a thug, and if you've got a really established pampas grass, you may well have to get a mini digger in order to remove it if you want to get it out, because it's really, really dense. The roots are really dense, the crown is really dense, and it's very, very solid. You could have a go trying to do it with a fork and a spade, but believe me, it will be a lot of work. Now, with other evergreen species, such as carex, all you really need to do is simply cut out the sort of flowering stalks and any leaves that may have been scorched by sun or wind, or any diseased leaves. And the best time to plant and divide ornamental grasses, people always ask me this, is not in the winter time or the autumn, when sometimes, you know, a lot of herbaceous stuff can be divided. You must do it in the spring, and the reason for that is that grasses don't really like the wet, and so by doing it in the spring, you're giving the plant enough time to get its roots down throughout the summer, allows it to grow into a nice substantial plant before the winter comes and sets in. And then you've already got some growth on there, which is going to protect that crown down below. So always divide grasses in the spring and not in the winter. I would also advise, actually, if you're planting new ornamental grasses, to do that again also in the spring and not in the winter time. I've always found that they just take a lot better when you do them in the springtime. There's also the lovely grass Ornamental, which is the pheasant's tail. Ornamental, bit of a mouthful, which is the pheasant's tail grass. It's gorgeous. It sort of has these sort of green, brown, ambery red colour sort of going through it. It's really stunning. And that is very similar to the steeper, where all you need to do is literally go through it, comb through, and remove all of the spent flowering stems. And Anamanthale is actually really great because, oh, Donna's just asked a question. Are there any grasses that like damp, clay, and wind? We're in Fife, and it's pretty wild at times. Yes, there are. If you want to go for a really lovely one, panicums sometimes really work quite well in clay soil. We've got clay soil actually down here, down in Kent, and I love panicums because they sort of they don't take up much room, but they give you a lot of height and a lot of sort of waskiness. So they sort of have a lovely sort of natural sort of clump forming habit, and then they send up these tall sort of inflorescences. And one that I really love is a Panicum virgatum Shenandoah, which is really lovely, which actually has some sort of red tints going through it as well. You can also put in things like Hakanakloa will do okay as well, which is that lovely sort of Japanese grass, which everyone really loves. You can get sort of a goldy coloured version, as well as a sort of a lovely dark green, lusty green one as well. You can even get a variegated one as well. Miscanthus grass also do well. Something like Miscanthus Morning Light, we've got that here again, down here in Kent on clay soil. That's a lovely grass because it sort of has these lovely sort of variegated white and green leaves, which are really, really slender. And then they send up the lovely inflorescence up nice and tall as well. So yeah, there's a few there for you, Donna. But, you know, also with ornamental grasses, sometimes a little trick is when you're actually planting them, if you actually plant them a little bit proud of the final soil level, they actually do a little bit better. I say they don't really, no grasses really like to be really, really soggy, but they like the ground to be moist and obviously well drained. And just by having that little bit proud, it just helps with the free draining, and also just helps keep the plant happy. So hopefully that's answered a few there for you, Donna. A few grasses for you. As I say, grasses are brilliant. I really sing their praises. I know they weren't really in fashion up until really sort of 80s, 90s here in the UK, and I know we now sort of embrace them, and I think rightly so, because there are so many out there, from really sort of small ones right up to the very big ones, and they, as I say, they knit the garden together. They give movement when you place them where you sort of get late afternoon sun and the sun shines through them. It's absolutely magical. It really, really is stunning. So there we go. That's evergreen and deciduous grasses. Hopefully that's answered Crofton Park, and obviously I will hopefully be going back to Crofton Park to see how the garden is progressing. It was a lovely project to work on. It was on this sort of strip of land right next to the railway line, and it's a community garden, and we created sort of a nice sort of hub area which could be used for events, and then it sort of has lots of there's a shady part to it as well with lots of ferns, and then we sort of go through, and there's sort of like a woodland area where they sort of do storytelling, and then it goes through again to a nice lavender walk with a lovely seat at the end. Really great project to work on, lovely people. So if you're ever passing Crofton Park railway station, just look around the corner and you will see the community garden that I designed. As I say, please, if you like what I'm talking about, waffling on about, then please like, share with people. The more likes I get, the more sharing I get, the better it's seen on the internet. So this is a very quick one, which is just picking up on my video that I did on Internodal Cuttings on Clematis, on one of my gardening tip videos. And this is actually from someone in Belgium called Ludo. And Ludo, you're very, very welcome, and welcome all the way from Belgium. They were asking, can they still take clematis cuttings now? Well, the answer is yes, as long as you can cut off a non-flowering stem above a leaf node, and with that length of around about 90 centimeters, you can still produce internodal cuttings as long as you keep the soil moist and the environment a little humid with some bamboo canes and a clear plastic bag. You must remember also that the clematis length you're going to cut off is still very young, very green. It hasn't gone woody at all or anything like that. As long as it's like that, then you'll still be absolutely fine. And as soon as you see new growth within the pot, that is, then you literally remove the bag, just keep the soil moist, keep it out of direct sunlight, and then when you've got really good roots come popping out the bottom, then you can plant them on, and you've got your free clematis plants. And what's better than that? So hopefully, Ludo, that's just answered that question. It was just, as I say, a lead on from one of my garden tip videos. We've now got a question, which is, I wondered if you have advice on how to get rid of dock shield bugs. They are all over my rhubarb and are reducing the leaves to lace. Thank you in advance, the Essex Gardener. You'll notice I've got names this week, which is really good, isn't it? It's handy, isn't it? For those of you that don't know, the dock shield bug is a beautiful bug, beetle. It's bright, shiny, green, sort of glistens. It's sort of like a burnished metal, it looks like. It's also otherwise known as Gastrophysa viridula, and it looks like a precious gemstone, really. You normally see it between May and June, and it's common across the whole of the UK. But they nibble away at the leaves, turning them into what could only be described as, the Essex Gardener says, as lace. So making them basically look really tatty and really sorry for themselves and a bit unsightly. They love rhubarb, they love sorrel, and they also love ornamental rheums, unfortunately. What they do is when they've mated, you'll see sort of yellowy orange rugby shaped, very small eggs that are laid on the underside of the leaf. And when the larvae hatch, they're black and they're sort of about, 2-3 millimeters long, something like that. And then they just literally graze away on your lovely leaves. And the female can lay a shocking number of eggs. She can lay up to 1,000 eggs, which means 1,000 larvae possibly, to nibble away on your rhubarb. Being an organic gardener myself, the organic and most effective way, and really the easiest solution, is to remove by hand. Picking off the larvae, picking off the adults, and if preferred, you can crush the groups of damage. You can try and catch the adults. They sort of curl up a little bit and then sort of fall to the ground or into sort of the leaf, a bit like the red lily beetle on lilies when they just fall to the ground upside down and you can't see them. They're very clever beetles, aren't they, when they do this? So you can try and catch them if you can. But rather than squashing them, why not sort of take a plastic container out with you with a lid, take off the munched away leaves and any leaves that might contain where you can see those sort of eggs at the bottom, and put them into the plastic, and then any male or female adult beetles, also put them into the plastic, put the lid on, and then immediately go somewhere into the fields or the wild or wherever and release them. And that way you're not killing nature, you're not harming it whatsoever, you're just putting them somewhere else. And I don't mean put them onto your neighbour's rhubarb, I mean put them somewhere responsible, somewhere in the wild. Into woodland would be quite nice. There's wild sorrel out there, which I really love, and obviously dock leaves as well. But also, I think what's really important is, obviously, there are natural predators as well to beetles. This is the whole sort of nature's life cycle, really. And the best predators are birds and amphibians, such as frogs and toads. So if you've got a pond, then you can sort of hope that they will, the toads and the frogs will actually eat the larvae and eat the beetles. If you put your bird feeders sort of near to your rhubarb leaves or near to your rheum or near to your sorrel, then the birds will come down and they might then just have a little appetizer, which will be on the larvae or on the beetle. It's making sure that you get this natural balance in your garden. And when you've got that natural balance right, then you don't need to use herbicides or pesticides. Now, of course, there are herbicides and there are pesticides for a whole range of beetles and insects and all different types of things. But I would really urge people not to use them. You know, they've all got something in them which is going to affect that balance, that natural balance. So it's really better to just feed your garden, have a really good mix of plants, which is going to attract the different types of wildlife, the different types of bird, and then you'll be amazed within no matter of time. You'll be having birds in your garden, they'll be eating away at aphids, they'll be eating away at beetle larvae. So just try not to go for the herbicides or the pesticides. I do urge you, please don't do it. So what I would probably say is, as I say, make yourself a cuppa, go out there with your little plastic tub, collect them all, put them in there, and then drive off somewhere and go and release them into the wild. And that way, as I say, you're not affecting that natural balance. And you've got to remember that everything really in the garden, even slugs and snails, which I know we all hate, they are all here for a purpose in the garden. And I know it's difficult to sort of try and think what is the purpose of a slug, but they're food. They're food for chicks. They're food for birds. They're food for toads. So everything. We are obviously part of that natural cycle, and we have a responsibility as gardeners to make sure that we sort of protect our wildlife and protect our sort of native plants as well as our native flora and fauna. So there we are. That's hopefully answered your Dock Shield bug problem. Probably not what you wanted to hear, but unfortunately I would say go out there, do it by hand. That's really the simplest one. Next question is, hi Mark, could I ask a question for Saturday if you have the time, please? This Golden King holly was delivered in March. We had planned to have some chestnut trellis put in 90 degrees from the fence along the line of the bricks just before lockdown, and then to plant the holly in the corner where the fence and trellis meet. Just waiting for the trellis so far, just because it's going to be easier for the fence guy to have a clear area. My question is, can it be left in the pot for much longer? I fed it with blood, fish and bone and kept it watered. Or should I go ahead and plant it before the trellis is put in, i.e. get it in the ground as soon as possible? Or will it be happy to wait, and if I should, how far away from the trellis and fence should it be planted? It's just under 6 feet now. Not sure how much room to give it for growth in years to come, and that is from Jane. Long question, I know, but it's basically down to a shrub. So a shrub that's actually growing in a pot, and when is the best time to put it in the ground if you're going to put some fencing in or a wall, and how close do you put it against that fence or wall? Well, first of all, Ilex Golden King, or Holly Golden King, is a lovely variegated holly. It has these sort of grey-green mottled leaves with this sort of really beautiful, bright golden margins. It's really stunning. It's fairly compact, it's conical growing, it is evergreen, and being female, you're going to get those lovely autumn berries. Of course, to guarantee that you're going to get those berries, ideally you want to have a male one nearby as well, but you will get berries on this because it is a female. I would probably say it's probably one of the best variegated hollies actually around. It's beautiful, it's a really good doer, so really good choice there, Jane. It will eventually get to about 6 meters by 4 or 5 meters wide, but it does respond very well to pruning, so don't panic. what I would always say is, as you know, in my 4Ds, when it comes to pruning, remove your dead, diseased, dying, and decaying wood, and then any sort of wayward branches that might be going off, just prune them off as well to keep that lovely sort of sharp conical shape. So with pot-grown plants, they can stay in a pot for some time. You've already fed it. You're already watering it. I'm assuming you bought it in a pot. So it will be absolutely fine still like that. What I would do though is I would move it sort of out of the direct sunlight and just put it somewhere sort of in dappled shade whilst it's still in the pot. So therefore the pot won't dry out so quickly and the plant isn't under so much stress. It's not under stress, it looks absolutely healthy from the photo that you sent me. But I would just move it to somewhere sort of just a little bit sort of out of that sort of bright sunshine. Excuse me. Now, when it comes to planting, you're absolutely correct, and you should not, should I say, plant it right up against a fence or a wall. More often than not, you'll find that the soil sort of around the bottom of fences and walls are very dry. They're normally poor quality soil. They're also probably full of bricks and debris and stones. So it's not the greatest place to plant everything. Also, you get what's called a rain shadow, and that's obviously where the rain will then obviously fall. But because you've got this vertical, invariably you sort of get this dry bit down here, which is at the bottom of the fence or the trellis or the wall, and therefore plants don't get watered, and therefore they might not live. So the best way of dealing with it is to really think about the shrub that you are planting. Think about its final size, and if you've got the space, then plant it half the distance of, plant it half its size away from the wall. Now, obviously, we don't all have that space, and as I say, it gets to about 4 or 5 meters wide. So you're talking about sort of a 2.5 meters away from a wall, which is a lot. So what I would say is do it about sort of 60 to 90 more towards 90 centimeters away from the wall, and then what that will do is it will allow it to sort of just still keep that shape, and you'll still be getting some light to the back. As long as you keep it pruned and trimmed, you'll still get some light around to the back. Now, if you're planning that you don't want it to be a conical shape, you want it to just sort of start growing away, which it will do eventually if you start sort of taking sort of branches here and there, then you can sort of tilt the plant, still plant it sort of 90 centimeters away from the wall, and then sort of just tilt the top slightly, and then as it starts to grow, it'll go towards the fence or the wall. That's the same with any shrub, really. If you put in shrub roses or things like Abelia or Escalonia, anything really, or Euonymus, always plant it about sort of 60 to 90 centimeters away from a wall, because it is going to grow and it is going to get bigger, and you want to get nice rounded shape on a shrub. It will obviously eventually, if it gets bigger, you will eventually obviously only get growth mainly on one side, and you'll hardly get any growth where it's right against a wall. That's inevitable, which is why I say if you can plant it sort of half the distance of its full width away from the wall, it means you can sort of get around it really and trim it that way. But as I say, we don't all have that space. So do that, and then what I would say is give it a really good, once you get the trellis work in, get all of that done, so the plant's way out of the way, it's not in the way of the contractors. Get all of your trellis work in, then give the soil down below a really good soak before you plant. Give the plant a really good soak as well. Then sprinkle some blood fish and bone, dig a hole, and then sprinkle some blood fish and bone into the bottom of the hole, fork it all in, then put your holly into the hole, obviously taking it out of the plastic pot, backfill it, give it another good water just so that the soil gets all the way around the roots and around that sort of soil that was there within the pot. And then if you can, then give it a mulch. Give it a mulch with ideally homemade compost, but if you don't have it, then just with bought compost. And if you do that after you've watered, you're actually going to keep more moisture in the soil, and it will do it no harm. When you do that, though, make sure you keep a little bit of a ring around the actual main trunk of the shrub, and then have the mulch going around it. And then that way, your plant will love it. And all you need to do is just keep going back and checking it. For any sort of new plant, especially sort of that size, it's going to be thirsty. It's going to want watering. So you're going to probably need watering once a day, especially at the moment where we're not really having much rain at all. I mean, the soil here in some places is really hard. So give it really good water once a day, not sort of a little one. Give it a really good water. Now, you could also, at the time of planting, you could plant a length of drain pipe. And the reason for that is when you put your plant into its hole in the ground, if you take a length of drain pipe or sort of 2-inch pipe or whatever, and you put it in vertically next to that potted plant, with one end down by the roots and another end sort of proud of the soil level, backfill it all, then when you come to water, you can just put the hose down into that pipe, and the water will go right down and get right to the roots, right where it's needed. And that's, it's a very simple thing to do. And when the plant's growing, you eventually won't see that pipe anymore, but you've still got access to it, so you can still water, and therefore the plant will grow away. So all good, really. So that's what I would do. I would take it a little bit away from the wall and give it a good feed, give it good water, or wait until the contractors have finished. Now, the next question is from Alice, and she says, I would like to put some hellebores under a small weeping cherry tree that I planted 2 years ago. 2 questions. Is the tree established enough to plant under, and can I split this hellebore? And she sent me a lovely photo of a hellebore, which was in a pot, and it looks really, really healthy. So first of all, congratulations, Alice, on your hellebore. It looks brilliant, and obviously you're caring for it very, very well. You can underplant a tree really at any time, as long as you water each plant appropriately, including the tree. Now, I don't know if you did this, but you could do what I've just mentioned with the holly, and you could put in that vertical pipe again, and that will allow you to water the roots of the ornamental weeping cherry. So you could do that, let the water get, so that way the water will go down to the roots where it's needed. And then whatever you underplant it with, whether it's hellebores, pulmonarias, or whatever it might be, therefore the roots of those herbaceous plants aren't actually competing with the roots of the tree that are going to be much lower down and going much further down in search of water and for nutrients. So it's about sort of looking and thinking about how, when you plant things like this together, it's that sort of symbiotic relationship, and you've got to think about what's good, how the roots are. So some roots, obviously, as we know, will just like a taproot, will go straight down. Some roots are sort of just clump forming and they'll just sort of stay there. Others sort of send down little rhizomes and they spread all over the place. And sometimes they're just really, really close to the surface. So if you know that, then when it comes to watering, you sort of gauge how much water you need, and also how deep the water needs to go down, how much it needs to drain away, in other words. As I say, you could, if you haven't done it, then you could have put that pipe in. I would avoid trying to put a pipe in afterwards, purely because you don't really want to damage any roots. And now it is quite a young tree, so you might be able to get away with it. What you could do is literally just sort of get down there, get in with a very small sort of trowel, just start gently taking it away, a bit like an archaeologist really, gently sort of to start taking the soil away in a particular spot. And if you can get down to the bottom level of where the roots are, then you can put your pipe in, backfill around the soil, then you can put your hose down there and it will water the tree right at the roots. But be careful, because you don't want to damage those roots. if you haven't buried a pipe, then obviously, as I say, you need to water accordingly. So what I mean by that is you need to water the tree, let it drain away, give it a really, really good soak. Trees are thirsty things. Sometimes you have to leave sort of a hose just sitting there and the water just going in. As long as the water's draining away, then it's fine. I'd probably say if you do just leave it on, keep going back every half an hour, just keep checking to make sure that the water isn't pooling on the surface. If it's pooling on the surface, stop, because it means then the water isn't draining away quick enough. Let the water then just drain away and leave it, and that will be absolutely fine. Then, obviously, you can then start, when you're putting your plants in, you can then water your plants accordingly as well. Water them before you plant them, and then water them once they've been planted as well. Now, when it comes to dividing hellebores, the best time to do this is really after flowering, which is sort of mid to late spring. So now you're sort of towards the end of that period. But all you need to do, and it's really simple, is literally take the plant out of its pot, and you'll probably be able to just pull it apart. You'll probably be able to pull sort of bits of green growth off as well as the roots. As long as you've got enough sort of green and enough roots per section, you'll be absolutely fine. You can also sort of, to make things a little bit easier, you can take it out of the pot, you can then wash off all of the soil, and then you'll really see the plant and you'll see where the roots are, and you'll even see sort of the crown of the plant as well. And if it's a really established hellebore, then sometimes, that could be quite dense. So what you want to do is you want to wash the soil away so you can see the crown, and then it makes it easier. So when you can cut between the growth buds, and just with a sharp knife really. And as long as you can leave sort of 3 buds in each division of your plant, then it's going to go and recover really, really quickly. But as I say, it's probably in that pot, it's probably fairly young, you can probably be able to just pull it apart. I will stress, hellebores can irritate the skin for some people. So I would advise that if you are someone who's got sensitive skin, to wear gloves when you're dealing with hellebores. A bit like euphorbias from that point of view. Now, obviously, you can also sow seed of hellebores, and the best time to do that is between June and August. And all you need to do is get a seed tray, sow thinly onto the soil, and then cover lightly with horticultural grit. Leave the pot somewhere in the open, not in the greenhouse, leave it somewhere in the open away from direct sun, but don't let it dry out. And then when germination occurs, you can bring them into a cold frame or a cool greenhouse, and then when they're large enough, you can transplant them into small pots. And then when you first see that true set of leaves, and then you can give them about a liquid feed about 6 weeks after potting them on into their individual pots. Something like a seaweed feed, for example, will be absolutely brilliant. And also remember that established plants also produce their little babies, and you would start seeing those sort of scattered around the base of your parent hellebore. And all you need to do with that is, obviously, when they've got to a nice size, around about sort of 8 to 10 centimeters tall, just take a little hand trowel or fork, lift them out, and then plant them wherever you want them, and you've got your plants for free. So there's many different ways of dealing with your hellebores, Alice. They'll look absolutely gorgeous under a weeping cherry. As I say, you could add in things like Pominaria, you could add in things like anemone, for example, or wood anemone would be really lovely, anemone nemorosa. You can even put sort of daffodils as well underneath, and that way you've got that sort of lovely, really sort of rich sort of spring colours that will come through. So it will be really, really beautiful, and you can make that really sort of lovely spring scene. Now, there are more questions, but I'm just wary of the time, and it is 22. So I have been waffling on for 40 minutes. I might leave the other ones till next week, purely because I know I'm not going to probably get through them. But they will be, just so you know, for next week. There's a silvery residue on seedling leaves. What is it? Pruning a young hawthorn in its first year, and also a leggy sambucus. Oh, nothing worse than a leggy sambucus. And which need to be potted in, and when is the best time to do it, and is there anything they can do to reinvigorate it? Oh, Alice has just come back. Lots of good advice. Thanks you so much. You're welcome, Alice. Hopefully that will work for you with your hellebore and your lovely weeping cherry. Please send us a photo when you've done it. Don't be scared when you come to divide your hellebore. Same with any plant. Don't be scared when it comes to division. Just go for it. Nurture it, give it some water, give it a little bit of a feed when you make your divisions and you plant them on, and you'll be amazed at how quickly your plants can spread around the garden. We've got probably, I don't know, 10, 12 sort of clumps of hellebores in the garden, and almost every year now we lift and divide and we move them around the garden, purely because I love them so much. I like the sort of really deep, ready ones. I really love those as well. But we've got some really nice doubles, which are gorgeous. And just, you know, a little bit of advice as well. If you want to use hellebores and bring them inside the house as a cut flower, then there's nothing better really than having a bowl of water and cut them flower stems quite short, and then just let them float on the surface of the water. You can put in some tea light candles as well, floaty ones, and it looks lovely. It looks really lovely. We sometimes do that for when we have a supper party, or we're having someone around for dinner. We sometimes have, especially during the winter, like early spring, we have a bowl of water in the centre, and we have all hellebores all over the top with some candles in. Oh, John has come back. Thank you for the inspiration for the woodlands. Woodlands feel around a planned wildlife pond. Enjoy the. Oh, wow. So they're planning a wildlife pond by the sounds of it. Is that right, Donna? Are you planning a wildlife pond? That sounds really, really lovely. Thank you, Annie. Annie loves Teddy to send me a love heart. Thank you very much indeed. I think that might be because of the hellebores rather than me. So there we are, everyone. That's 3/4 of an hour of me waffling on again for the live gardening clinic. We've dealt with ornamental grasses. We've dealt with the carrying off the clematis cuttings. We've done the dock shield bugs. We've done planting a shrub against a fence or a wall. And we've talked about a small ornamental plant and underplanting it and dividing hellebores. Oh, so Donna, you're making a wildlife pond. How exciting. Nothing better than having a pond in your garden. You'll be amazed at the wildlife that will come. Doesn't have to be huge, as Monty's shown on GW. Doesn't have to be huge at all. But you will be amazed. Nature just suddenly finds its way to the water. And before you know it, your frogs and your toads will be eating all your slugs and your snails. So that's it, everybody. Thank you very much for another Saturday clinic. I will see you next week. And please remember to share, like with all of your friends. And please continue to send me your questions, because I could do, but I would rather do good, 100 to 900 viewers, which is brilliant. I'm really, really delighted by that. I hope it's helping people to do the garden. As you know, I'll be off into the garden from now onwards. Probably my other half won't see me until Monday. I'll be out there. So everybody, keep safe, keep well, enjoy your garden, and happy gardening, everybody, and goodbye.